In this final part of the jumping tutorial, we're going to add some code that allows us to jump when we are on platforms and to stop moving when we hit a platform. In our previous code, we checked whether we were touching the ground to see whether we were allowed to jump or not, but obviously we need to add some additional states to what is happening here. So we need to have not just whether we are touching the ground or not touching the ground, but we have several different states. Falling we'll call state 0. This is the natural state of our cop, our player character. On floor will be worth 1, and that would be the equivalent to true. And on platform will be 2. When we are jumping from a platform instead of the ground, then we will have an additional state, which is platform leap for 3. We're also going to add a jump strength constant to allow us to easily tweak how strong our leaps are to make for a more realistic jump. And we're going to set ourselves, instead of touching ground as false at the start, we're going to set touching ground to be falling, because this is the normal way we would start the game, by falling from the sky. So I'm going to add all of these items just round about where gravity is in my code. So we've got gravity is set to 10, and we are going to put in jump strength, and we'll start that off at 20. And then we need to have all of the different states that we can be in when we are either standing still or falling. So we have said first of all that falling is going to be 0, but I'm going to put them all, instead of over several rows, I'm just going to put them all in one row here. So we've got falling, we've got on ground, we've got on platform, and we've got the new state, platform leap. And they are going to be worth 0, 1, 2, and 3. So this is a way of us being able to platform. This is a way of us being able to use numbers, but in a much more readable format. Instead of comparing to 0, 1, 2, and 3, we're going to compare to something that reads quite easily. So, for example, our touching ground, which I've got down here, I'm maybe going to move that up beside the others just to make it more convenient. So, having defined these, we're going to say that touching ground equals falling. So what we now need to do is to change our game mechanics to use these new constants. So here is our test for whether we're allowed to jump. And previously we said if touching ground is true, we were allowed to do a jump. Now we're just going to say if touching ground is anything bigger than falling. So falling is 0, and anything bigger than that should allow us to do a jump. If we're on the floor, if we're on a platform, and if we're in platform leap. We're also going to use our jump strength here instead of the number that we've been using before. So we're going to come down to our event handlers here, and we're going to say if the event key is key space and touching ground is greater than falling. So if we're not already falling, then we must be able to jump because we can jump against something. And then we're going to say here, instead of -7, we're going to say jump strength multiplied by gravity. And that just gives us a bit of tweaking for what we are going to do. Now we had 7 in there, we set a jump strength of 20, so that will probably need to be sorted out. So now what we need to do is have a think about what state we are in. If we're touching the ground is on the floor and we've pressed the space bar, then we move into a falling state. If we were on a platform, we move into a platform leap state. So when we press the space bar, we start a jump and we change from being able to jump to no longer being able to jump. So having pressed the space bar here, we're going to say if touching ground equals on ground, then touching ground changes to falling. Do an elif here, touching ground equals on platform, then touching ground gets changed to a platform leap. So we were on the ground or on a platform and now we're in the air is what's happening at that stage. So what we're now going to do is to add some code to our game logic section. We're going to do this right at the top of the game logic before we've changed position of anything, because this will affect the speed that things are happening at. This is if we land on a platform, then we stop moving, and so on. So I'm going to come here to the game logic section, and I'm just going to come directly inside here. And we're going to say that platform collision is going to start off at false, so we haven't collided with a platform, but we're then going to check each platform in turn and see whether we do actually have a collision. So I'm going to call it a landing first. So for landing in platform list, so each platform is going to be checked in turn, and then we're going to say if check collide. So check collide is normally takes for our player it would be X and Y and then size and size. That's how we normally check collisions with our player. However, we only really want to check whether their feet have collided with the platform. We're not really interested in their head bumping it on the way up and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the Y to be Y plus size. So that should take us to where the feet are. And then we still want the same width, but we only want it to be 1 pixel high. So just at the level of the feet. And we're going to change that. And we're going to check it against the landing. So we want the landing 0 as the X coordinate. And then landing 1 is the Y coordinate. And then landing 2 is the width of that platform. And then landing 3 is the height of that platform. So I'm checking against the feet and the platform. And I'm going to say if that's bigger than 0, in other words, if it collided, then what are we going to do with it? Well, if we've collided, then we're going to set platform collision to be true. So we know we've bumped into a platform at that point. Okay, so what do we do if we're bumped into a platform? Well, depends on what we're doing at the time. If touching ground is falling, if we were falling and we've landed on a platform, then touching ground gets changed to be on platform. And the other thing that we have to do usually is that we hit a platform, we want to then be on top of the platform. So we change our Y coordinate. Y equals landing 1, which will be the Y coordinate of that platform, and then minus size to place us on top of the platform. Okay, so that's our check for each platform to see whether we've bumped into it or not. After we've done that, we need to think about how that's going to affect our speed. So if platform collision is false, we didn't bump into a platform, and that means that we are still falling, so touching ground is falling, which is fine. And then we need to think about what that's going to do to our speed. So if touching ground is falling, then we know that we're falling under gravity, so y speed equals y speed plus gravity. But what if we weren't falling? What would that do to our speeds? Well, we'll put an LF in here. If touching ground is on platform, or touching ground is on floor, then y speed should be 0. We stop moving vertically. So there's one last condition that we haven't taken care of here, and that's LF touching ground is platform leap. So let's have a think about that then. So what's happening if we're leaping from a platform? Well, it's similar to if we were leaping from the ground. So we set our y speed to be minus the jump strength multiplied by gravity. And we then, it's as if we've just jumped off the ground, we're now going to start falling again. So touching ground equals falling. And if we try that out, I can see I've made the classic schoolboy error here. I've done a comparison but using a single equals. So comparisons are always going to use a double equals to compare. And on floor is not recognized. On ground is what it was called. So again, we need to think carefully about our constants and be consistent. On ground is what we should have had there. Okay, so I can move to the side, I can jump. Now, one of the things that's kind of getting in the way of things here is the bounce off the top of the screen, so I'm just going to fix that just now. So I do have in my y conditions here, if y is less than 0, y speed equals minus y speed. I'm just going to take out this whole section about y being less than 0. I'm going to allow myself to go off the top of the screen. If I do a strong enough jump, I could leave the screen. And still something going wrong. So looking through our code, we've got this new section that changes our speed. But what we forgot to do was to remove the old version of changing the speed here. So we need to go to y speed here and comment out the use of gravity at that point. And if we now run, and I click up here, get a bit of movement going. If I press the space bar, I jump and I'm on a platform, and then I fall down. And if I jump up onto that platform, I can then jump onto that one. I missed. But I would need to tweak the strength of the jump here so that